And welcome back, Cubs faithful fans, to another electrifying episode of Tracks on Cubs, your go-to source for everything Chicago Cubs. I'm your host, Brandon Trax Hyde, and today we've got a jam-packed show that you won't want to miss. We're breaking down the first 32 games of the Cubs season that are absolutely crucial. Who do we play? What are the toughest matchups? And what must the Cubs do to come out strong? Plus, Sammy Sosa has been spotted at Cubs spring training camp. What does that mean for his relationships with the team? We'll also discuss key prospects updates that could impact the season. And I'm thrilled to welcome a very special guest, the man, the myth, the legend, a longtime friend of the show, former WGN reporter, Larry Hawley. He's covered the Cubs extensively and knows this team inside out. But before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We're on the road to 3,000 subscribers, and once we hit that milestone, one lucky fan will win a free jersey of their choice. All right, so let's play ball. Larry, how we doing today, buddy?
I am doing wonderful. You know, I think the weather at some point is going to turn. I thought Friday felt like a day that felt like opening day. It was in the upper 40s. It was windy. So hopefully we're turning around. It's cool to have baseball back, and the Cubs are opening just in a couple of weeks.
I know. I'm so excited about it. So, Larry, let's talk about the first 32 games, bro. It's a tough stretch, starting with the Dodgers in Tokyo, including a series against the Diamondbacks, Padres, and Rangers. In total, 20 of these games are against teams that have had winning records last season. Larry, how important is a strong start in Major League Baseball, and what kind of statement can the Cubs make in these early games?
Well, when you mentioned coming on the show, taking a look at that start, and it really is just a remarkable lineup of games that they have. You're going to face the Dodgers 7 times, if I've counted right, and they're obviously the juggernaut. They're the reigning World Series champions. They've just gotten even better in the offseason. But you get games against the Diamondbacks. There's a lot of great hope for them there. The Padres and the Rangers are hoping to have bounce-back seasons. And you get the Diamondbacks a couple of times. And one thing I mentioned to you, Brandon, is the fact that the Cubs don't play an NL Central opponent until 1 month into the season. So it's not until April 29th that they face the Pirates on the road. As far as the start goes, I've always said, you can overcome a bad start, but you don't want a disaster. You don't want to go something like, if you're going 30, you're looking like 6-26. You don't want to go, 10-22. You want to try to stick around 500, and at least that gives you a chance. Now, can you come back if you start 10-22? Sure, but you dig yourself a big hole. But it's a really great test, and I'm trying to think of like schedules for the Cubs I've seen before. This has got to be one of the hardest schedules I've seen. A really tough test for a team that I think in some ways is still trying to figure out where they're going to be on that competition level.
I totally agree. And, Larry, we've seen teams that start slow, struggle to catch up later in the season, Larry, from your experience covering this team, do you think the Cubs roster is built to handle such a tough opening schedule, or do you think that we could have done better?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the Cubs are, in my mind, and I even thought this last year, they're at this point where you don't think they're going to have a collapse and win like just 60 games. But you're not sure if they're going to take this next step and go up to 90. I think they've got a roster that can do that. But I do think that they have some chances to start strong. I really like that, I like having the Imanaga, the Steele, Tyone start. Those top 3 guys are really good. We'll see what Matthew Boyd does. And then, of course, the 5th starter is a little bit up in the air. Javier Assad's not going to start the season right now, at least it appears, per Craig Counsell. So I'm really interested to see what this team can be. I think it's a great test. The Cubs have added people. They've added some stuff to already a core they have. There are some injuries. There are some questions. It's a great test. Do I think they built enough to compete with it? I think they've got something for it. How much they'll have for it, I think, is to be seen.
I like what you brought up about the factor about the pitching, and we know that having a strong rotation in the bullpen is key to these tight early games. Out of those pitchers that you discussed, which pitcher do you think will be the biggest X factor for the Cubs in the stretch?
Boyd is really interesting to me because we're now entering his 2nd decade of being in Major League Baseball. He debuted in 2015. He's coming off a recent Tommy John surgery that comes, relatively late in his career. He had a nice little stretch there with Cleveland last year when he came in. And so in many ways, he's kind of an unknown. He's about an average pitcher in Detroit. He had some high ERAs. He had some under 500 records. I'm really curious to see what he'll have. Or is he going to be somebody who finds himself and has a late run? And if you can do that, then you've got Imanaga, you've got Steele, you've got Tyone, and then you add him in there, and that's a pretty formidable four starters on that rotation. And there's a lot of other things to figure out, but Boyd really is the X factor to me because we don't know what he'll have, and we'll see what he does have after Tommy John when he gets to a full season.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, man. I really think that we could be onto something pretty good, but there are a lot of if factors for me, man. I don't know. I really was hoping there's some guys out there. I don't even know if I should bring them up because I might have just been a meatball, fan thinking that we could have, went out and got those guys. So, but I'm hoping everything works out, and like I said, I agree with you. Justin Steele, Shota, those guys are the ones that are the most exciting ones of the bunch, and the outliers are the ones that got me a little worried about. But there's the offense guys, man, like Seiya Suzuki. They need to produce. Larry, what do you think is the most important hitter for the Cubs in these first 32 games? For me, I'd like to jump ahead of you if you don't mind, because I'm kind of wondering what's going to happen with a 42-year-old, or is he 40?
I believe
40.
40. Yeah.
40, yeah. I just added a little bit more. I'm sorry about that, Mr. Turner.
No. Okay.
Is age a factor there, or do you think that he could still come out and be productive?
I mean, he's shown his ability to still hit.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing to do. You're not on a really terrible contract with him. I believe it's 1 year, $6 million, as I think might be the number. I can recheck that.
Yeah.
You're not on a terrible contract. It's one of those things where, I think of like Eric Hosmer a few years ago. You bring in some of these veteran guys, you see what they can do, and if they don't work out, they don't work out.
Yeah.
Turner does bring a veteran presence with some infield flexibility. He seems to have hit a little bit. So I think, it's hard to say. Every player does his own thing. I don't disagree with it. It would have been nice to have Bregman because obviously you're talking about an all-star caliber player.
Yeah.
The salaries didn't quite match up, and you talk about where the Cubs willing to make that money. I don't think it's a bad signing, and especially with you're waiting for Shaw to see where how his injury is going to go in his progression. I don't mind it. Could he repeat it? Yeah, I think so. He's a veteran guy. He's World Series champion. I think he could do something. What he'll do, it's wait and see.
Well, before we pose the question to Cubs fans out there, what do you think is a healthy projection of those 32 games for us to be? What's a good start? What do you think's going to happen there? 20 games, you think, or what's your take on it?
For me, if they can level out at 16-16, I think you might take that. Again,
50?
It's not like if you can level out, I think you can live with that. I mean, this is a formidable schedule. I mean, this is very formidable. I'm trying to think of years I'm thinking 1997 when the Cubs started. I think they were 0-13, I think, and they had to face Atlanta and Florida when they were both really good.
Yeah.
Right back to back. These are really a really strong one. If they can hold the line at 16-16, that's fine. I think anything over that is great. You get through your hardest stretch of the season.
Sure.
And you allow yourself to heat up a little bit when you get into division play, which they will do in May.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, honestly, and you want to have a 20 wins. If they go 16-16 and level out, I think you're good.
Yeah, and I need to pause and hit the brakes, because I get a little over my skis, especially last year with the Bears, man. Oh my! But I think a lot of us were expecting a lot more, and we'll save that for the next show. But honestly, I agree with you. That's probably a safe, look is 16-16, folks. You heard it first. Let's go 500 ball. Mm-hmm. Let's get through the first stretch of 32. I didn't do us. Maybe we could save this for another show after the first 32 and recap as to what we thought, and how it all panned out. But did you get a chance to look a little further down the road yet or no?
Yeah, I've taken a look a little bit at the April. So you get the Pirates for a 2-game series right at the end of April, and
Yeah.
then you kind of you dive in a little bit. So the Brewers, it's the Pirates Brewers series.
Yeah.
You do get the White Sox series comes up. That will come up in the middle of the month. You get the Reds come in for 2 series toward the end of the month as
Yeah.
the schedule kind of levels out a little bit. I see also on there you've got a trip to New York for the Mets. You've got a trip to Miami for the Marlins. Going through there. So that's through your Memorial Day, which I always consider the first marker. So you get a little bit more of a more even-handed schedule as you go through there. You get into the division. Again, kind of a surprise that the Cubs get to the division so late that they're going to play so many games without getting there. It's really interesting.
Why do you think that is? What's the, I mean, is there anything behind that? Or because for me, I honestly, if I'm MLB and I'm trying to get this thing to grow a little bit, because we know it needs a little help, it's always going to be America's, favorite, sport. But the thing about it is like, you need a little help with that. Like, I feel like the NFL has a really good pulse on that. You'll see, like Kansas City might open up with the Eagles or something, or if there was a big trade, or I think, and I haven't heard anything yet, obviously, I'm not an insider, but I would think if the NFL was going to do their due diligence and make this game exciting for the Bears, open it up with the Lions, because Ben Johnson was the hottest ticket. He was like the number 1 draft pick of coaches, projected to go out there. So why not week 1, Chicago versus Detroit, and don't make it in Chicago. Make Ben go back to Detroit and play against, you know what I mean? Like, there's a little drama there,
Yeah, I don't know why, the MLB, the scheduling rubric is very, very interesting. Obviously, they're going to go to Tokyo, and that series was announced long before, so you get the Dodgers. We've seen the Dodgers come into Wrigley Field fairly early. Maybe that's something that they like to do, those early trips. They come in here. So they were in here early last year. They're back in this year again fairly early. And I think the Cubs actually go out there taking a look at it. And the Cubs go out there as well. Those are good. I guess the one thing, Brandon, if you think about it from attendance, sometimes those April games can be a little dicey. It's, because you get the weather. Bringing the Dodgers, you're probably going to sell out those 2 games. So sometimes that can be the same thing too, where they think about that. It's a very interesting scheduling rubric, but we'll see. Sometimes it's interesting, but we'll see how it all pans out.
Hey, there we go.
There we go. I was gonna say, I was wondering, what
what do I do now?
I'm like, all right, well, we'll just talk some more Cubs, or I can go off there. That's all good.
Yeah, no, and please do if that happens, because it's been a little spotty lately. I don't know what's going on.
Hey,
I know you got it covered as better than anybody in case the event of that happening. But Cubs fans, what do you think? How many games do you think we'll win in this stretch? Drop your predictions in the comments below. You guys know this is a show created from a fan to fans. You're not going to get this on the 3-letter networks of ABC, NBC, CBS. I won't say WGN because we love them. Well, I like the others too, but I like this close-knit community of podcasting. You're not going to get this on the 4-letter network. We will respond to the comments, and we will make sure your voice get heard. Everybody can see your name. It's really cool, close, intimate connection. I love this community. I love you guys. Drop it in the comments below, Cubs fans. What do you think? How many games do you think we'll win in this stretch? And drop those predictions down there. So, moving forward onto some pretty exciting news. I'm sure you've been on this for a while here, Larry. Sammy Sosa back at Cubs spring training camp. Oh my. The prodigal son returns. All right, so let's talk about something that the Cubs fans have been buzzing about, guys. Sammy Sosa has been spotted at spring training camp. This is a huge deal because, as we know, Sammy hasn't had an official relationship with the Cubs in years. Larry, what do you make of Sosa's presence at spring training camp, and do you think this could be the start of a reconciliation between him and the Cubs?
Oh, I think it's well underway. I think the reconciliation started when I think the sides finally came together. I had the chance to attend an event with Club 400, Stuart McVicker, who he put on a charity event where Sammy appeared in Chicago. Sammy was making the rounds in the city, as I think he really wanted to make the attempt to mend fences. Listening to Sammy that night, it seems like he's had a lot of self-reflection over the last few years about maybe the things that went down when he was with the Cubs, the great successes. Of course, we've always talked about his exit in 2004, which was forgettable. And then, of course, the rumors of steroids that have been around him that have ever really since basically about the time he left the Cubs. Those have always been there and around there. And I think the fact that the Cubs and him finally mended fences, which I think a lot of fans wanted, a lot of fans called for a number of years, is a very positive thing. So I think those fences are already mended. And you see by him coming to spring training, it wasn't he just went to the convention. I think he wants to be a part of the franchise. He had a little bit of an acknowledgement of past discretions. I think he had that in his statement. He didn't really come out and directly and say anything about performance enhancing, but he did kind of make that. And I think that was enough for the Cubs to bring him together. And he finally goes in the Hall of Fame. I'm a big fan, Brandon, of reconciliations. I believe it's something healthy. The Cardinals did it with Mark McGwire many, many years ago.
Yeah.
Even for you college basketball fans, Indiana did it with Bobby Knight, with something I didn't know that would ever happen. Something I felt was very important. This is a very important thing that I think the Cubs have done for a popular member of their history, someone who had a tremendous impact on really helping Wrigley what it is today. There's no doubt, you cannot deny it. And I'm very happy to see that the Cubs have come around to this, that Sammy in reflection has thought about this. I think it's a very positive thing. And by him being at spring training again, that relationship strengthens.
No, I agree, man. And you said it best. I mean, it's been ongoing. I think a lot of people, because, we kind of put it away for a little bit, and then it comes out when the season starts to warm up, and then we see all, pitchers and catchers report. So some people might not quite be up to speed on it, but yeah, you're right. It's been going on for a little bit, and I like it. I think it's good. So, fans have been divided on whether Sammy should be officially welcome back. But like you said, and you said it well, I think it's long overdue. So let's talk about legacy, Larry. You've covered so many Cubs legends. Where does Sammy rank among the all-time greats? And do you think he deserves to have his number retired at this point?
Well, I think there's a great argument he does. Sammy, now I want to preface something I wanted to say before. And this is interesting, and this is going to go into the same question. There are going to be some fans who will never forgive Sammy. And I've seen that in my own stuff that are going to say, look, in our minds, he cheated, and cheating cannot happen, and those things are gone. There's going to be a big section of the fan base, or at least a fair, sizable, that say we're done. Sammy cheated. We don't want this. We hold against him leading the team at the end of 2004. We can't forget that. So where does he rank among Cubs legends? Certainly the statistics are there. He has the home run record. He passed Ernie Banks when he was still a member of the Cubs. I believe he did that in 2004. That's Comer's hit with the Cubs, which Sammy was able to pass when he was here. From a statistical standpoint, he'll be remembered. We think of eras of Cubs baseball. You think of the Banks, the Williams, the Santos. Then you go into the 70s. You think of the Bruce Sutter, somewhat Bill Matlock, even though he was there. You think of the 80s with Sandberg and Sutcliffe. And Sammy has his own thing, that 1990s, that little bit of the early 2000s, at least the first half of 2000, where he was very good. Remember, one of his great performances were those two, was the NLCS against the Marlins, where he had the game-tying homer in Game 1, the bomb in Game 2 that hit the camera well, and then in that Game 6, that unfortunately infamous Game 6, he drove in the first run of the game. So I think Sammy is going to be up there among those legends, among the great.
Yeah.
Is he on the Mount Rushmore? Don't know. That's a hard one to crack. But is he among their greats? Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's great, man. And talk about a vivid memory. Oh my gosh, it's like you just saw it, man. It's like you just left all those games, So let's transition over to Cubs prospects watch. Who's ready to shine? Now let's talk about the future of the Cubs. We've got some exciting young talent coming up in the system. One name getting a lot of attention is Matt Shaw. He's expected to be the Cubs starting third baseman, and his combination of power and speed has been turning heads. Larry, what do you think Matt Shaw can bring to the Cubs lineup this season?
Well, I hope that he can finally give them a third baseman for the future and someone that they can look to at that position. How much do they think he can do that right now? Well, they did put a fair amount of money for Alex Bregman, so maybe they wanted to give him a little bit of a cushion. That may not exist. Turner's going to give you some opportunities there to let him adjust. I am really curious, Brandon, really to see what he becomes. We've seen prospects before. He has a tremendous ceiling. I am very curious to see what he can become. If he does and becomes the Cubs' third baseman, great, you've set that position because you've been trying to set that position for a while. The Cubs have been trying to set first base for a while. It's nice to have that position. I think for me, it would be great to see Shaw, and I know he's dealing with an injury to start out. I believe it's an oblique. And I think as he gets through that, we'll see what happens. But honestly, Brandon, consistency, hitting, fielding, and if this year he can establish himself as that third baseman for now in the future, that's really critical for me. But again, you have to see it. You have to see him out there on the field, and as long as he's healthy, he's going to get that shot.
I'll tell you what, man. I'm excited to see what he does in the hot pocket. It's exciting. I can't wait. I've been, ever since, one of my favorite players has moved on, and Chris Bryant. I've just been waiting, and I'm hoping this is that guy, Larry. I really do. Another young arm to watch is Ben Brown.
Mm-hmm.
He's been a dominant presence in the minors and has a chance to make a real impact on the Cubs bullpen this year. Larry, do you see Brown as a future closer, or do you think he could transition into a starting role?
He's probably kind of figuring himself out a little bit.
Okay.
Brown has had his moments here and there. I'm curious what he will become, and I think the Cubs, right now they probably need more for bullpen. So I'm curious to see what will be there for bullpen. I love the pickup of Presley, from Houston. I think it's finally great that the Cubs have a closer. They really, Adbert had that last year, but he was injured early on. They never really had it. So I'm curious, really, again, Brown's another one of those guys. You acquired him in a trade. You want to see what he's going to do. He's had a few, flares and a few good moments. He's one of those variable guys that I believe that he can do really well. I'll put this, Brandon, into the Shaw category. Let's just say that he has great success out of the bullpen. Let's say he's able to hit. Let's say Shaw is able to come out really well. That's a scenario where the Cubs maybe go from an 83 to an 84 win team to maybe a 91 or a 92 win team where you're talking about the playoffs or even a division championship where you can actually do that. He falls into that list for me where you're kind of waiting to see, and really only time kind of shows what he'll become.
Wow, that would be so cool and well put too. I mean, I'm excited about it all, and we're both kind of touching and agreeing that there's a lot of question marks and stuff, but it could be good, right? You could spin it into a very positive thing, Larry, especially when our opposition doesn't really know. If we don't know these guys that well, our opposition doesn't know that well either. We could kind of squeak out, like you said, 16-16 right out the gate. That's positive, but maybe we win another one or two. Who knows, man? But Cubs fans, which prospects are you the most excited about? Drop those thoughts in the comments below. Listen, I got 5 burning questions before you wrap this up, guys. Before we wrap up today's show, we want to hear from you. Drop these answers in the comments below. Question number 1, how many games will the Cubs win in the first 32 games? Question number 2, should the Cubs officially welcome back Sammy Sosa? Question number 3, who will be the Cubs' most important player in April? Question number 4, which Cubs prospect are you most excited about? And question number 5, will the Cubs make the playoffs this year? Why or why not? Larry, I got to ask you question number 5. I don't want to put you on the hot seat, brother, but do you think the Cubs actually, and I'm not going to, make it 100, but do you think they have the potential to make it to the playoffs this year?
Yes, I do. And I think, additions like Tucker and Presley, if you can get something out of Shaw and solidify that, if Turner plays very well and hits very well, and if you're able to get that rotation, we talked about the top 3 guys you're pretty set on. Yeah. And if you get something out of Boyd, again, Boyd's kind of a really interesting case. Could it turn out where he's not it doesn't work out? Sure. But he's an interesting case. If these things work out, then right now, in my mind, the Cubs sit somewhere between about 84 and 87 wins. Ooh. That could get you to the playoffs. That's where they sit. And again, we're looking at the roster. They've made They've made improvements. Now, not slight. I'd say they've made improvements. You've gotten Tucker. You've gotten a closer. You've done some other things. You have another year with a good, at least solid top three. I think that it's fair to say 84 to 87. If those guys turn out, okay, maybe you can talk from 87 to 91 or 92. And I think that would be enough to at least get you into the playoffs. And with the NL Central being a little bit, here and there, that might win you the division. 92 wins might get you the division. And like I said, the Bakota projections are about 91.
Yeah.
Right now, my mind's, not really trying to jump ahead. I kind of have them a little bit better than what they were last year, 84 to 87. If these guys turn out, sure. Yeah, I think absolutely a playoff appearance is possible. I think it's very much on the table and very much the Cubs' goal and something probably Jed Hoyer needs as he approaches a critical time in his career.
Man, you know what? You got me excited, man. Let's watch some Cubby ball, right? We'll be ready and reading some of your answers on our next show. So be sure to comment, guys. Larry, thanks for joining us today. As always, it's great having you. Cubs fans, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any of our coverage this season. Follow us on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, X for even more Cubs content. This has been Tracks on Cubs by Chicago Sports Podcast. We'll see you next time. Go Cubs, go.